Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Ask Her, Advancing Gender and Racial Equity in the Workplace. I am Crystal Rucker, Director of Development at Washington Area Women's Foundation. For those new to the Women's Foundation, we are a community-supported organization that invests in the power of women and girls of color in the Washington, D.C. region. We do our work through grant making and advocacy, and we, along with grantee partners, center the voices and lived experiences of women and girls of color to influence policymakers and philanthropy through the lens of gender and racial equality. Author Diane Merrichild once said, "A woman is the full circle. Within her is the power to create, nurture, and transform." At the Women's Foundation, we believe that working together to create a more equitable workplace, we can help ensure that women, especially those of color, have the opportunity to succeed and thrive regardless of their background or identity. We hope today's conversation leaves you feeling inspired. And if it does, we encourage you to share your experience on social media using hashtag #AskHerSeries. We also invite you to engage with us during this conversation by using the chat box and submit any questions for our panelists that we will take the time to end our discussion to answer. Now, the moment that we've all been waiting for. To introduce and moderate this timely conversation, we are excited to have joining us President of TV1 and CLEO TV and one of Washington Area Women's Foundation's board members, Michelle Rice. Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you, Crystal. I am so honored to be here today. Thank you for allowing me to channel my inner Oprah and to lead this very timely, important, and relevant discussion during Women's History Month. So happy Women's History Month, everyone. So creating a positive and productive workplace culture requires a genuine commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Unfortunately, despite some progress in recent years, women, particularly women of color, continue to encounter significant obstacles in the workplace. These barriers include pay inequity, limited opportunities for advancement, and bias and discrimination in hiring and promotion practices. Today's discussion aims to address these systemic challenges and to explore strategies for fostering a more inclusive workplace that enables women to reach their full potential. By the end of this discussion, we hope to shed light on the issues facing women in the workplace and identify practical steps that companies and organizations can take to promote equity and to create environments where women, especially women of color, thrive. So joining us today are three exceptional women of color who have shattered the glass ceiling in their respective fields. Lisa Anders, who is Vice President of Business Development at MCN Build. Jennifer King, Assistant Running Backs Coach at the Washington Commanders. And Yolanda duCille, Vice President of Global Corporate Communication at NetApp. Each of these women are accomplished professionals who have dedicated themselves to promoting equity and ensuring that diverse voices are heard and that they are valued. Their impressive accomplishments and unwavering commitment to creating a more equitable future for women makes them ideal thought leaders for our discussion today. Lisa, Jennifer, and Yolanda, welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
Great to be here.
So without further ado, let's get to it. Let's start with the question for everyone. Each of you are respected women of color in your career with a wide range of expertise and experience. I'm very interested to learn more about your career journey, as I'm sure folks are as well, and what led you to your current role. Can you talk a little bit about your journey to get to where you are today? And is there a defining moment that helped you shape your career path? Let's start with Yolanda.
Sure. I think both career and defining moment probably collide for me. I was a young single mom. I had my son just out of high school and was looking for a way to raise him and gravitated towards what came natural to me. And it was creativity, whether it was in visual or in writing. fell into a couple of communications degrees. Fast forward to a career in aerospace and defense that took me all around the world, and I lived coast to coast over the course of about 17 years, and then into agency and now into tech. It's all been centered around storytelling beyond what an organization does, and more so who they are and why they exist. And I've just really found a passion in delivering against that purpose. Probably the most defining moment in my career since I've been a communications professional has to do with diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I'm a mother of 5 children now. A couple of them you see right here behind me. But this one here, who's now 14, when she was in kindergarten, was having a bit of an identity crisis. She had natural hair. She had never had chemicals in her hair. And it's, if you do, fine, but she just had never done it. And she was in a school that was predominantly white. And she sought to look and fit in with those who are around her. And she came home one day and we went back and forth with her, putting water and Vaseline, you name it, pick a product out of the bathroom that she'd put in her hair to make it stay straight and long and to get rid of the curls. And she looked at me crying, and when I was telling her she couldn't do it, she said, I don't understand. As she's crying, you do it. And I learned from a 5-year-old in that moment that the role model that I was trying to be for the world and how I was trying to show up for the world was damaging who I was given the responsibility to raise over time. And so from that moment, I had to really start working on myself and how I showed up to the world as my true self. And I'm sure we'll get into more of that here as we go through, but have tried to navigate my career from that moral compass.
I love that. Showing up as your true self, personally and professionally, is very, very important for women of color. Jennifer, how about you?
Yeah, my journey, it's a complicated one, but I'll give you the short version of it. After graduating, I started coaching college basketball. And so I coached college basketball for 9 years, was successful, got to work with a great group of people. And ultimately, I got a head coaching job at Johnson Wales University in Charlotte. And when I moved there, I was beside the Carolina Panthers facility and stadium. And I was a longtime football fan. At that time, I had been playing women's tackle football for many years. So it was a big part of my life. And ultimately, I met Coach Rivera, who was the head coach of the Carolina Panthers, and we started building a connection. And at that time, as a head coach, we had won a national championship. I was National Coach of the Year, and he offered me an opportunity to come intern with the Panthers, which obviously I did. I thought I was going to be there for 2 days, ended up being there for about 5 months. After that, I got a call to come work in professional football full-time out in Arizona. And that was my biggest, point in my career. I essentially left a very comfortable life. We had won a championship. Life was good. Where I was in Charlotte, it was a great city. And I decided to leave it all behind and bet on myself and go coach professional football out in Arizona, where I'd never been. So I just leaped essentially, and just used my faith as kind of the guardrails of what I was doing. And I had the support of my family to do that. So I was in Arizona. I came back to the Panthers, coached at Dartmouth, and now I'm in year 4 here in DC.
I love that, taking a leap of faith. I mean, that's what we all have to do. Women are oftentimes called fearless, and being fearless doesn't mean not having fear. Sometimes it means leaping forward with fear. So kudos to you in your journey. Lisa, tell us a little bit about your journey and any defining moments.
Yeah, so mine started as a little kid. I was always interested in building anything, making anything. Legos, all sorts of crafts, model cars. I mean, I made model rockets and shot them off. So, I was the little girl who wanted tools and a workbench, not dolls and clothes. And my mom used to tease me about it, in some respects, but she was always very supportive. I love the sciences and, thought about going pre-med, but I was exposed to engineering actually from my high school sweetheart, because that's what he was going to major in. And so I switched from pre-med to civil engineering. So that was like an early defining moment. Went to Howard University and got my degree in civil engineering. And, thought about architecture and design, but that never really moved me because I'm a hands-on person. So I went straight into construction. I worked in all facets of it. My first year, I was in a hard hat, work boots, walking around the site. And I just loved it and went on to learn all facets, estimating, running projects, and so on. Got my MBA, and you really thought about changing careers because I was looking at what other people are doing, and they were advancing and they were in business. But I really had to sink deep inside and realize that I love this business of construction. And how do I use that to advance myself with my MBA? So I worked on some amazing projects for the Cleveland Clinic up in Cleveland, the Cole Eye Institute, did some work on the Orioles Stadium way back. And, you know, a couple of my proud moments, and I'll say, you know, to me, it's a defining moment that really was a catalyst in this later half of my career was, you know, I had moved to Atlanta and was getting settled. I had a brand new house and everything. And from relationships, from my DC time in DC, I got a call. And this person was like, you would be the perfect person to run the Martin Luther King Memorial in the National Mall. And while it wasn't dollar-wise as big as some of the projects I had worked on, it certainly had a lot of cachet with it, visibility. So I moved back home and ran that project, and subsequently ran the African American Museum. And, you know, with 20 plus years under my belt running projects, you know, it was time for something different. And so the new challenge was, rather than building buildings, I wanted to start building business. And that's what led me to be into business development that I'm in now, which I love too, because I get to strategize and help people expand and grow.
So again, another theme of following your authentic self. I mean, from Legos to the MLK Memorial to a museum, your mother should be really proud that she really directed you and allowed you to follow your passions. So that's awesome. This is for everyone again. Can you talk a little bit about some of the greatest challenges that you may have faced as a woman of color in your field? And how have you overcome these challenges? Jennifer.
Yeah, I mean, obviously being working in football, there's not a lot of women actually on the field. So I think a lot of the testament to why I don't have a great answer to this question are the people that I've worked with. I've worked with a great group of guys everywhere that I've been, a great group of players, and, you know, they've been super supportive. And I know that's not everyone's journey in my profession, but I'm very thankful and fortunate for the guys that I've worked with, that they've never made it an issue. They've never excluded me. They've been very supportive, and, you know, I'm thankful for that.
That's great. What about you, Yolanda?
So I was thinking about this. I think on the open, I talked about losing myself a bit, right? And so two things come to mind. One is code switching and the fact that Black women often vacillate between the benefits and costs of, you know, being their true selves or adjusting or altering their identity, their speak, their dress, et cetera, to fit into the room around them. So that's probably been one. And I think what goes hand in hand with that is being the only in the space. So coming up in aerospace and defense, you know, A&D, again, not, you know, it's not heavily saturated with, you know, Black women in leadership are, you know, are definitely amongst the minority. Same thing in tech. So coming into spaces where you are the unknown entity, oftentimes having to prove yourself over and over again, like really reestablish. I found myself entering rooms and needing to read my entire resume. But, you know, as a part of introducing myself, where oftentimes my counterpart would not have to do the same. So just finding a way to get comfortable with that, or alleviating myself of what it felt like was the need to do that. You know, just.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, did you feel like you had to do that, or did you feel like that's something?
It was a bit of both. You'd be in an environment, and I don't know if you've all have ever been in social environments where the very first thing they say is, "Where'd you go to school?"
Yeah.
It's like the first question, right? So it's all about those things. It's like, oh, well, I went to a technical school and then I did, and then it feels like, you're trying to qualify yourself to be amongst the group. And I had to let that go, regardless of whether it was something that I felt like a validation that I needed or that they needed. And just to remind myself that I deserved to be in that space, that I'd earned, my way to that space, and that the people who needed to know already knew. And I didn't need to, to shrink myself to make anybody else feel comfortable. So between that code switching and understanding how to manage that onlyness in the room has probably been some of the bigger struggles, more consistent struggles.
Listen, and everybody has a different path and a different journey, and yours is going to be different than someone else's. And like you said, sometimes when we stand in rooms where someone's saying, hey, I went to Harvard or this or that, and you feel like your qualifications don't add up to that, but they do. You're in the same space, you deserve to be there. And we create this imposter syndrome, fake it till you make it thing, but you don't have to fake it till you make it. You made it. So kudos to you.
And you know what, and to Jennifer's point, that's not always the case. I've been in some spaces and rooms where you have true allies. Yeah. And I don't mean allies that are just like on the side saying, hey, you did a good job, but those who are actively and in an open space acknowledging you and giving, validating your presence and your thoughts and your ideas. So it's been a little bit of both. But to answer the question on challenges, it'd be the challenges, and have definitely flourished in the environments where you have those advocates, you have the sponsors, and you have the allies that are both pushing you and pushing the community in which you're amidst to think differently and behave differently.
Yeah, allies and mentorship for women is difficult, but having a sponsor is even more difficult because women get mentors a lot of times and men get sponsors. So right. Kudos to males who are out there really being allies and true sponsors for women and advancing the work of diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Absolutely.
Lisa, how about you?
Yeah, I call those sponsors raving fans, the ones that speak up for you when you're not there. But for me, I had a little bit similar from both Yolanda and Jennifer. I mean, I have been, my career started back in 1989. So being a Black female in the commercial construction space in Washington, D.C., there wasn't that many of us. And, but I felt very supportive. I've always pretty much gotten the assignments that I sought out to get, which I talk about a little later. But I think mine was more of an internal issue. And, after I was in the career working for the same company for about 5 years, I started to question if this was the right industry for me, because I'm looking around. Of course, you're looking at your career growth, and I'm like, well, who's there that looks like me? And I wasn't sure I could reach my maximum potential of what I bring to the table and my growth being in a traditional kind of good old boy network. So it was sort of an internal challenge at whether I'm just going to pave this road and move forward, or if I was going to seek some other career. So of course I continued on, but I did bring it to a point of visibility. Even at that early age in my career, I thought to myself, I wasn't going to talk to my immediate boss because it really wasn't their issue. It wasn't like, oh, I didn't get a promotion. But it was more of a corporate-wide and industry-wide issue. So I just chose to write a letter to the president of then, I was working for Clark Construction, and requested a meeting. And it was kind of, the letter was saying, I don't see anyone in my demographic, like, what are we doing? And he met with me and we sat down and we talked about it. And it was just at someone 5 years out of college, that was just, I felt great that I had brought up that point. And, I think that to overcome these sometimes, why go the path of somewhat least resistance? And I just would say, making good choices about where you work and who you work with, and understanding that they're aligned. If, that industry, that company, that may be aligned with your vision and how you operate so you can thrive.
Perfect. I'm going to stick with you, Lisa. I actually think you already answered the question that I'm about to ask, which was, I was curious to hear your perspective on navigating difficult conversations in the workplace, particularly as a woman of color in the construction industry. You just talked about how you advocated basically for yourself going to your boss.
Right.
And then given unique challenges that women of color may face, in your opinion, what skills do you consider essential for success in fields that are not traditionally led by women leaders?
Yeah, I've got a whole list here to rattle off. But first, I will say this, and I mean, it's kind of funny when I look back early in my career, I found that when I came to the table with the solution already, then it would get questioned. And you had to like validate the solution. And so I found myself sort of changing how I presented it. It would be more of, instead of saying, this is what we should do, it would be more, hey, what do you think? Here's an option, like getting some kind of buy-in and letting it seem like, you know, maybe they came up with the solution. And I don't know that I advocate for that now, but sometimes it's just how you approach things. So some of the essential skills to me, I think, that have helped me navigate is number one, and I know sometimes it feels like in this day and time, people seem to get expertise in like lightning years. I don't know how they do that. But certainly in my industry, and I think in a male-dominated field, you definitely need to make sure that you are solid in your technical expertise so that people can't poke holes in it, right? I call it making sure you have all the tools in your toolbox as possible so you can gain respect for your knowledge. And then, you know, relationships, we've already kind of talked about that, are so key into creating scenarios where, like, if there's some kind of issue, you're given the benefit of the doubt because you have some relationships. You have that raving fan I spoke about when you're not in the room that's speaking up, like, how about Lisa? We should put Lisa on this project. And gaining buy-in, you know, be a strategic thinker and show your initiative. Like, even I find that women oftentimes go after positions that they already know how to do, and men go after positions that's a stretch. So we should go after more positions that are a stretch, even though we don't, if you know how to do it, then you're not going to grow, right? So, you know, to overcome that guy who's also going after that job, if you're showing you're a strategic thinker, you have this initiative, sometimes that bridges that gap. And, you know, I always find it helpful to have a mindset of helping others get what they need, right? Giving before I get. And that helps to solidify relationships. And, you know, ask for help when you're not comfortable. It sometimes feels vulnerable, but it's better than trying to seem like you know and you don't. And tapping into the softer side sometimes helps. If you can embrace that, I think that's what makes a difference sometimes between a male in a role and a female in a role. And I think it's good to be likable, you know, and you do have to stand up for yourself, but manage the attitude around that. So those are some of the things that I've found that have helped me navigate.
That's great advice. And I'll often say to young folks who are trying to move ahead in a company, if you're going for the job and on day one, you know everything about that job, it's not the job for you. You need to stretch yourself. And like you said, women often wait till they check every single box to get to that, you know, on the job description, instead of pushing yourself and saying, I'm qualified to do this. So I love that advice. Great advice. Jennifer, let's go to you. In 2021, you became the first Black female assistant coach to be hired by an NFL team. Can you briefly talk about the significance of that moment for you?
Yeah, I mean, it was, I obviously great news to receive. It's kind of I wish it was a cooler story. We were already working on in a game week, and Coach came on my office to let me know that he was going to promote me the next season, and I just kind of went right back to what I was doing. I don't know if I was in shock or what, but it was obviously a great opportunity, and I'm thankful for it. And it's been historic, and I think that's something that I can appreciate when I'm done. I'm in the moment now. I'm working, I'm grinding to make us better, and to be a better coach as well. And I always say I wish I had a cooler story about what I was doing, and I called all these people, but I really just went right back to doing what I was doing. But I worked hard to get here. It wasn't easy. It wasn't a straight road by any means. But I'm a true testament that you can get wherever you want if you put the work in and do the right things.
It's a cool story, because at the end of the day, if you can see it, you can be it. And, we can see you and what you're doing and your inspiration to young girls and women who are wanting to do what you do. So representation of people of color at coaching positions in the NFL is still limited. And your achievement in breaking through barriers is truly inspiring. I believe your insights and experience could be extremely valuable to others who are interested in pursuing your career path. So with that in mind, I'm curious to know, what advice do you give to other women of color who are interested in pursuing a career in coaching?
I think it's so important to build relationships. All industries, that's important, but in coaching, that's how you get jobs, building relationships. I meet coaches every year at the combine or different events that the league may have, and you never know when one of those guys may reach out, to have a job opening. But it's important to be able to attend events and speak and be your authentic self to meet people, just because you never know where one relationship is going to lead. And I've met great people in my life and mentors at events that I didn't even want to go to or attend. So you never know what's going to happen, but be prepared to work. Doors open and close all the time, but what are you going to do when a door closes? Are you going to move on to the next one, or are you going to feel sorry for yourself and keep staring at that closed door? So it's going to be very important for you to fall forward. And that's one thing I always tell people is, when failure occurs, make sure you fall forward, because it's going to happen. But are you going to feel sorry for yourself? You're going to keep going forward and keep moving. And those are the two main things. And then in sports, it's a tough business. The wheat get eaten in sports. So you have to come in with a certain, attitude and energy about yourself in order to be successful, because there's so many people who wants to work in sport. It's so competitive. If I lost my job today, it will be filled tomorrow. That's how competitive it is. And, so many people want to be in this position. So I think it's important to continue to grind, continue to get better each and every day, and continue to bring value to whatever situation you're in.
Okay, great answer. I'm going to give this to the whole group. And we're going to start with Yolanda. Creating a more inclusive and equitable workplace is important for all employees, but it can be especially critical for women of color who likely either will or have faced unique challenges based on challenges and biases. As a leader and a woman of color, I would be interested to hear your thoughts on how companies and organizations can ensure they are creative, supportive, and inclusive environments for women of color, and what role can women leaders play in these efforts?
So maybe I'll start with the latter first. I think women leaders, we need to model the behavior. We need to remember what our journeys were. We need to be the first to act and to advocate. Maybe not the first, but we need to be actively advocating and taking action. To answer the first, I think it all centers around psychological safety. So as far as what corporations and organizations need to be thinking about, ensuring that as your employees show up, they feel comfortable being who they are. Septum piercings, tattoos, black, brown, purple, green, but that they feel like they can show up and they feel like they can share their experiences with their peers, with their leaders, with the organization to help move the organization forward. That's only made possible if we all agree to some degree of vulnerability, right? There's vulnerability on both sides. So as the Black woman showing up to work, letting my guard down a bit and being more open and sharing, and from the organization or the company side being willing and open and actively listening. So not a check the box approach to, well, you got the job, go, go and do it, deal with the environment, but actively listening and responding and engaging and demonstrating that vulnerability. And by doing that, it begets an inclusive and supportive environment, because you've got people talking to each other, caring about each other, demonstrating some degree of cultural curiosity that allows them to respond, to create environments that are more conducive to people learning and growing.
Absolutely. Lisa, what about you? How can companies create a more inclusive and supportive environment for women of color? And as a woman leader, what role do you play in that within your organization?
I love what Yolanda was saying. I mean, I hadn't thought from that perspective, because that's what we all would desire would naturally happen, right? So I was thinking that, corporations or businesses, no matter how big or small it is, I think really could do better on their onboarding practices, because naturally, right, if you have white leaders, male leaders, just because we gravitate to, we do it too. We gravitate to look at our friend groups, right? We naturally gravitate to people we relate to. So if you don't have a great onboarding process that intentionally has introductions of people, new hires, Black women, any new hires really, but in our case, we're talking about this subject that introduces the leadership and decision makers to the new hires. It puts you in the room together rather than you hoping to see them in the hallway and they talk to you, right? It's more intentional, and it creates an opportunity to foster a relationship. You could have, planned company events and internal networking, of course, mentorship programs that we spoke about, and intentionally hiring women of color in leadership positions. So then that already forces that affinity for seeing someone that looks like you. And I think it's important for employees to support us in outside industry organizations that are supported. Like in my industry, we have, Black women in construction and other organizations like that. As far as what, as a role model or women leaders, we can also reach out to the new hires and create mentorship opportunities, and really foster friendships and relationships and be sort of the sidebar conversation like they have with one another. And just championing efforts of inclusivity and as a woman leader, having a hand in the policy creation in these companies.
Yeah. Jennifer, I'm going to kick it to you. And I would say, if we were to put the NFL on a page with the word cloud, inclusive environment for women and all those things supported for women, none of that probably would pop up, at least as the first thing. But so we're glad that you're there and making change. But, how do you see your organization being a more supportive, inclusive environment for women, and your role in that?
Yeah, obviously it's no secret. We have had a history of not being a very good environment for women, but that's completely changed with Coach Rivera in our building. And obviously, we have our facility and then our stadium where a lot of people work. So I don't know a lot of people who work in our business side because they're at the stadium. But as far as being in our building, I got here at a great time because he came in to change the culture of our building, and he's done that, and it's like I said, it's fun to come to work. I know women in the building now. We hang out sometimes outside of work, which is the ultimate test of friendship if you would like to hang out with coworkers outside of work. And we're all good friends and we have a good time. And he's done such a great job of diversifying our building. We have women doing awesome things now in our organization. I tell the story when I first got here, even the bathroom or locker room, I was pretty much the only one, always there. And now sometimes, things are full. I'm like, where all these women come from? I don't even know everybody in the building, which is a great testament to just what we're doing. And, it's exciting to see I came in with a new regime and things have been very different. And, sometimes it's almost like, people are going the extra mile to make sure I'm good, which is cool, and it's not unnoticed that they're really trying to make sure everything is okay and that, everything's going well for me.
Thank you for sharing that. It's amazing. Yolanda, as a Vice President of Global Corporate Communications in the tech industry and a key contributor to helping organizations with their DEI efforts, you have a unique perspective on how companies can effectively communicate their commitment to promoting gender and racial equity. I'm interested to know your thoughts on what initiatives and programs hold the most promise for driving real change and how companies can effectively communicate these best practices to their stakeholders while ensuring that these efforts are sustainable and effective over the long term.
So first I'd say is it just doesn't start with communication. So oftentimes you'll see we choose metrics, we measure ourselves against the metrics and we communicate the metrics, right? And we don't go layers deep. What I like to look at in the conversations I like to be a part of is thinking about how we sustain financial performance, right? We report it, we measure it, we compensate leaders against it, right? So I don't think sustainability and improvement around DE&I should be any different. We're talking about measuring hires and measuring attrits, but let's measure the same way we measure safety and quality of our products and customer satisfaction. So what is that qualitative measure? What is, I think you mentioned at least, hire more women of color, but we can't just hire them and put them in roles, right? So what is the experience like? How are they positioned for success? What is the ecosystem that is wrapped around them in their careers to make sure that they have the development and the resource and the access that they need in order to be successful? Right? Otherwise, it turns into an attrit and they exit. So it's not about numbers. It's not about programs. It's not about initiatives. You measure what matters. So if your financial performance matters and you've got to report that to your stakeholders, you have to report that to the street, measure your DEI the same way, right? As you measure your quality and you measure customer satisfaction. The data supports that richly diverse organizations produce better performance, better business performance. So we're not doing it because it's just a nice thing to do. It's the right thing to do for your business if you want your business to thrive. Now, if I do bring it down to programs and initiatives, there are a few that I can think of. Employee resource groups I think are phenomenal, especially when they go beyond just affinity groups. And Lisa, you started to allude to this, also as well in your comments, but building these communities where, yes, folks see themselves in the work and in the business, but where they also become a wealth of information and knowledge and resource for the business to actually apply and leverage and become better. So it's both self-serving and altruistic in nature, right? The other is proper leadership. So it starts at the top. I mean, there's no simpler way to say that. We've got to have the right folks in place that are driving the investments and that are driving the resources, diversity councils, annual DEI reporting, so reports that are published, that are public, just like your financials are reported on a quarterly basis. That drives the accountability, the transparency, which again drives the performance, because again, you're measuring what matters. I consider myself, I know I'm in communications, and I say that communications is not the pointing end of the spear. I'm a business partner first, and I'm a communications partner second. So my job is to provide that counsel to our senior executives and to my peers that ensures that we're recognizing the implications of telling a story that has no substance. So the work has to be there, the leadership has to be there, the investments have to be there for the results to be there for me to have a story to tell. And that's where I believe I provide the greatest degree of value is I'm not going to tell a story that's not there. I'm not meant for those organizations. I'm not meant for those rooms and those spaces. And that's just, I wouldn't sign up for that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's wonderful. A DE&I initiative or program without metrics or behind it is just words on a paper. So data, show me the numbers. So this one's for the group. Building a strong support system and network of allies, we talked about this a little bit, can be especially important for women of color. I'm curious to know what strategies or approaches you have found to be particularly effective in building these relationships so other women of color can replicate your efforts. Let's see, Lisa, want to start?
Yeah, sure. I find it best to be getting involved sort of holistically. So of course, joining industry-related associations, volunteering on committees in those associations and speaking on panels, which Jennifer alluded to earlier. So being visible in your industry, but radiating that out beyond just your industry, I think is important because there's a lot of overlap between work and the community. And you can really build great relationships when you're getting involved in your community and you realize organically you're in this same organization, or like being a part of the Women's Area Foundation, right? If we could have a mutual interest in something, and then, oh, by the way, we're building this new project over here, and it's already an organic situation. And I think it's really important, like I said earlier, about helping others get what they want when you're building these relationships. And I mentioned before the industry, getting a collective. I'm in two groups, Women in Infrastructure. We're all Black women. We sort of organically put ourselves together, really from a social perspective, because we found that guys in our industry are doing things. They're playing golf or they're going for cigars, but they're also talking business. And we were doing the same thing. So while it was somewhat social, we also do get engaged in supporting certain candidates, raising money for candidates, inviting industry leaders to come and have dinner with us and speak and learn about things like that. And the one thing I would really stress that people get to know the government, local government folks and policymakers. I know it kind of sounds intimidating, but it's relatively easy. We're a voter. They're here to support us. And it's really just being in the same room with them and having enough courage to go up to them and go up to folks and introduce yourselves. I mean, it's really important. It helps you build that network that you need, and do it when you don't need it. Like, don't go up to somebody and, hey, can you help me with this? It really needs to be more organic. And like Jennifer was saying, I mean, my lines are so blurred. I'm going out for work, but it feels like I'm hanging with friends, right? And it just gets to be such a better environment to operate within.
Yeah. And something, I love that some things seem very daunting if you walk up to someone and say, hey, can you be my mentor? It is a little bit more like than if you walk up to someone and say, hey, can I pick your brain? And would you start doing that every week? Take them for, hey, can I take you to coffee? Bring the Starbucks in. Hey, can I sit in your office for 10 minutes? Guess what they're doing? They're mentoring you. They don't even know that you're a mentor. I have so many mentors, they don't even know that they were my mentors. So, because sometimes when you ask them, they're like, I don't have time for that. But when they don't know, they make the time. So make it easy for them.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be a little bit brave, and what you find out is a lot of that's just in your head, and people are nice. They're going to talk to you, right? They're not just going to shun you away.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Jennifer, how about you?
Yeah, I completely agree with what she said. I mean, obviously being in a space now where, I have mentees, please don't go up to anyone and ask them to be their mentor. So it's like, it's pressure, I feel like it's way harder than it has to be. But a lot of my mentors, we just develop organic relationships, meeting them, asking them maybe to pick their brain, or meeting them and then just reaching out to them later, maybe through an email or whatever, just to, say it was nice to meet you. I would love to ask you a few questions, or just kind of pick your brain whenever I get an opportunity. Just to keep it real relaxed and easy for that. And I think that's how I got most of my people, and just diversifying as well. As Lisa talked about, some of my mentors, they're not in sports. They may be in business, maybe in music, but they're successful. And success leaves clues, and it doesn't matter what area it's in. You can learn so much from people in different areas as well that help you in your area. And, with that circle that you're in now, even your group of friends, I call my group of friends some of my best mentors, just because everyone's out here, trying to get it. I say it's our time at bat. And I think it's really careful to always evaluate, your circle, because you don't want it to be a cage, and that cage not going to help you grow. Everyone in the circle should be, striving to be better and growing and developing. And that's something that I'm really big into, is just, evaluating the people around me and what are they bringing, what value am I giving to them, what value are they giving to me. So I think that's very important to do.
I love that. I'm going to steal it. Success leaves clues. I love that. In that, a lot of times people are always looking for mentors inside the building, and sometimes you can get them and sometimes you can't, but you can always go outside of, if you meet someone and you're networking outside of your industry, a lot of that is transferable to what you're doing. One more question, and then I think we're going to get some questions from the audience. As you look to the future, what impact do you hope to have in your field? And how do you envision yourself contributing to positive change in the workplace for the next generation of women leaders? Yolanda.
Sure. I'll end as I started, so raw, unfiltered access and authenticity, right? Being able to be myself and demonstrate through that the boundless value that I bring to any room. And in that, inspiring young women to bloom, young Black women, those who look like me, to bloom as they are intended, and to go where you're celebrated and not tolerated. That's one of the things I think I accepted the most in the past few years is I don't have to be in this room. There's a lot of other rooms. There's a lot of other tables, and where there is no table, I'll just go build it myself. Versus, because it is a mental and emotional drag to be in a space where you have to fight to be every day. And I just refuse to do that anymore. I'm also realizing that the story I told at the beginning with my daughter is that they continue to watch me, so I'm not just charged with bringing other women in my, professional field along, and those who, but also those who are right in my house. I've got 3 beautiful girls. So, between the 3 of them, they're relying on me, they're mimicking me, and they're trusting me to guide them. And that has to be rooted in this relentless belief that I'm worthy, that I'm enough, and I am my best as myself. That's what's important to me.
Amazing. Lisa, how about you?
Yeah. So I'm hoping to, I already do this, like Jennifer was saying, she's a mentor now, making myself available for the upcoming generation and so on. That's almost a no-brainer. But, I think about how can I be more innovative in creating real opportunities, expanding a new industry and exposing women to things that young women of color, to opportunities that they may not necessarily think about, and helping them understand that they actually have some of the tools. I was listening to Jennifer, and I was just talking to a girlfriend of mine yesterday, and I'm giving her some advice about a potential career change. And I'm telling her about her qualities. And she's like, I don't even see myself that way. Right. So, I want to be a part of helping young Black women understand what are their gifts that they naturally have and how they can grow those gifts so that they can be well positioned for any industry that they're in. And I talk to people, not just in my industry. A lot of people do reach out, and I enjoy mentoring, not just in you should go work at this construction company and that sort of thing, but really, I've gotten to a point where I feel like in my industry, and maybe Jennifer might have felt like this before, like you have to just be like, okay, this is a male dominated industry, so I'm gonna act more like a guy, right? But you don't have to do that. And you can lead with love. That's where we need to move to anyway in the world, is leading with love. And that's sort of where I am now, even though I'm in a kind of what someone say a hard industry. I think that even when I'm dealing with clients and even when I'm responding to RFPs and whatnot, I'm finding that the questions and the people that clients want to work with are yes, that's a requirement to be technically sound, but we want people we're going to enjoy working with. And I just want to pass that opportunity on in my industry for young women and women of color to feel comfortable to be really a woman doing this work.
Okay, if you haven't dropped a question in the chat and you have a question, we only have a few more minutes here. So I want to make sure if there's a question out there. We do have one that's from someone says, as a retired nonprofit professional with over 4 decades of experience and expertise, I want to unretire and go back into the workforce. Do you have any recommendations on navigating the landscape now as an older woman looking to empower that next generation of women warriors of color, getting back into the workplace to unretire? Anybody have any words of wisdom that might help?
I mean, obviously, I don't know, haven't been fortunate enough to retire yet, but I know I hope you're coming back for something that you love, something that's not going to feel like work. I think I've been very fortunate to work in areas that aren't like work. So when I'm here 15 hours a day or 16 hours a day during the season, like, yeah, it's work, but I chose this and I love it. So I really hope moving forward, you're doing something that you love and bring that passion and energy with you every single day into what you do, to make yourself happy and to make it not feel like work as you come out of retirement.
Yeah, I have a really good friend who's a retired police officer. She retired very early. And again, she took that and she always wanted to work in and somehow be attached to the entertainment industry. It was like, okay, police work, entertainment industry. But she's actually was doing private security for Shonda Rhimes. And then she started doing private security for Sarah Jakes. And she's been on the road with entertainment. I'm like, you did it. Again, this passion and sort of how do you align your passions with your experience? So I totally agree with that. Any other ladies have any experience?
I would agree with that. The only thing I would add is, to just do it. Now's the prime time. You're starting to hear these words, boomerang. Folks are leaving the workforce, not even just retirement. People are taking years off. They're traveling the world and coming back into the workforce, and the environment's changing. From us being a highly distributed workforce, that's relying on digital, a lot more travel. So there's just there's a wealth of opportunities. So I echo what Jennifer said, find what you love and go do it.
So there's been a whole lot of questions and distraction around who is the artist of the pictures behind you, Yolanda?
So I'll answer that really, really quick. So I honestly, I always draw a blank on his real name. His Instagram handle, which is where I found him, is duGA Art, DOOGA Art. And it's signed underneath the names there. And I've got 5 commissions from him. He is absolutely amazing. He does not open for commissions often, so I get mine in whenever he does. Make sure you tell him that Yolanda sent you. I get a lot of folks ask about them, but he did a fabulous job. And I think I mentioned it at the top of the call. Those are my girls. And he truly captured the essence and the strength of Black women. I mean, in their eyes and everything. So I love it. And I love him as an artist.
Okay, I want to just circle back, and I'm gonna definitely get that information as well.
I will send it to you. I will make sure I send it to you, Michelle, and I will give it to Sarah. She can pass it on.
Really quickly, just Jennifer, I want to circle back to you've already made such an impact just by doing what you're doing in your field. What impact do you hope to have in your field?
I mean, I want to make it easier for the people coming behind me. I'm kind of just making this roadmap as I go, being the first one to do it. But, I want to do a great job and let my body of work speak for itself. So when that next one comes behind me, they can get in and show what they can do and have their opportunity as well. So I think that's the biggest thing I focus on, is just staying locked in, doing great work to make it easier for the next one, and then the next one and the next one. Just because, I mean, obviously, I'm doing something different in the first, but I'm standing on a lot of shoulders that got me here as well. So I want to be able to help those people achieve their dreams and get to their level where they want to be, whether it's college or the NFL.
That's amazing. All right, so listen, I think we are at our time. Lisa, Jennifer, and Yolanda, thank you so much for being a part of this meaningful conversation and for joining us today. It certainly has been very informative, and I hope that everyone has had some great takeaways that they can take some of the things that you said and put them into practice. Great advice from likability at work, hardworking, being strategic, perseverance, failing and falling forward. I love that. You belong in the room. Data, DE&I strategy without metrics is just words on a paper. Stretch yourself, go for that job, even if you don't feel like you're completely ready for that next step. So many inspiring words, and that's why you women are amazing and have broken the glass ceiling. So to our guests, we hope that this conversation inspired you and that you will help us empower and build the next generation of change makers by making a gift to the Women's Foundation today using the link that's in the chat. I'm on the board, so got to put that out there. And we are doing great work. Your support will collectively accelerate racial and gender equity to give women the power and the resources they need to take change and reach their highest potential. Again, thank you everyone for joining us. The Women's Foundation will provide a link to this recording of today's webinar after the event. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.